Sounds like Luis Robert Jr. is not getting traded before the season starts. Let's discuss Chris Getz' comments regarding the rumors next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcast. Well, White Sox GM Chris Getz is making the rounds promoting SoxFest, and he addressed Luis Robert Jr.'s future with the Sox that I want to discuss in the first segment. Then he made an interesting comment about the heavy lifting of improving the roster being done. Should his free agent additions be considered heavy lifting? And finally, on today's Top Friday list, I'll go over the 5 non-roster invites that I'm interested in watching this spring training. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com. So right away, just off the bat, guys, I'm battling a cold. So if I sound like, near death or it's just battling a cold, but I'm here for you to talk White Sox baseball. And I think the market has made it clear to Chris Getz, his best bet is to hold on to Luis Robert Jr., hope he stays healthy, and then flip him at the deadline, especially if he can return to his 2023 form. That is the best option to get a maximum return to help the rebuild. Because as I've outlined on past shows, Luis Robert Jr. is likely not going to be with this team after the trade deadline, or at least he's not going to be with the team after this season. And just to summarize, for those that are stopping by for the first time, the soonest the Sox probably will get back to being even competitive is likely 2027, and that's the last year of LRJ's club control. And he's represented by Scott Boras, so it's unlikely he's going to sign an extension before 2027. So best to maximize his trade value, especially if he rebuilds it, and especially when there's only $40 million left owed to him, plus the remaining $15 million that'll, the prorated portion if you trade him at the deadline. So he's still going to come relatively cheap, especially if he can get back to that 2023 production when he was a 5F4 player. And second, this will likely probably be his last season with the White Sox, because if he does not stay on the field, if he continues to get injured, you can just buy him out for $2 million, because the next 2 years of club control are 2 $20 million club options with 2 $2 million buyouts. So that's why I appreciate Luis Robert Jr. now, because he's likely going to be gone. And if you don't appreciate Luis Robert Jr., still root for him to hopefully reclaim his trade value so you can get something for him better than a fraction of the cost that I'll discuss when it comes to Chris Getz' comments. But I really thought the rumors of the demand being something significant, because that was the rumors this offseason, and I've talked about it on past shows too, that at least the Sox would be willing to sell for something significant, along with his injury history, and then watching Eloy Jimenez get traded for a minor leaguer who just projects to be nothing but a bullpen arm. Obviously, though, nothing wrong with that, because as I keep saying, don't spend a lot of money on your bullpen. But Eloy was considered a core player, and they got that for him. I mean, the league once had a high perception of Eloy Jimenez, and then his value is Trey McGough. And then you also let Yohan Moncada go for nothing, and actually had to give him $5 million to go away after the injury-riddled seasons that he had. I thought that might motivate the Sox to get something for him. But Getz gave a hint at what Luis Robert Jr.'s trade market is, and quite frankly, thank you, trade market. Thank you very much, because it sounds like it's motivating Getz to roll the dice, and that's the correct move. Roll the dice, keep Luis Robert Jr., and see if he can reclaim his trade value. Here's what Getz said on the Mully and Haw show, on 670 The Score this morning. Quote, he had a season, unfortunately, that he missed a lot of time. He looked really good in spring training. Even in that short window at the beginning of last year, he was really having good at-bats. He was hitting for power. You were seeing the old Louis Robert. But then that leg injury that just took him out of the season. He came back. He was just out of sorts. He lost his rhythm. He just wasn't himself. He finished healthy. He's had a good offseason training down in Florida. For him, gosh, we got to find a way to keep him on the field. If that means we need to be very intentional with using the DH, in which we haven't been able to in years past because Eloy was in that spot, move him to the corners on occasion, Just be very watchful and mindful of his workload. We can keep him on the field even if he's not in center field every single day and night. The production is going to be there. Everyone around the league recognizes that. They do, and that is why they have interest. Unfortunately, when it comes to conversations, they are going to pay a fraction of his full value. You got a guy who was a 5-win player in 2023. Last year, we just got chunks of him because of the injury. We believe in the talent. We just got to keep him on the field because he can be a special player, end quote. So right there, I think he gave away his hand. Because notice, first of all, Getz keeps emphasizing keeping him on the field. And my hunch is that is what he was told about Luis Robert Jr.'s trade value from other teams. Yeah, we loved him in 2023, but otherwise he's not on the field. And availability and dependability is a great ability. So, that's what I think that the offseason is saying to him, that, Chris, you got to, get this guy on the field. You can't just, ditch him for nothing. Now, during his press conference with the media yesterday, because, again, Chris is making the rounds. He's promoting SoxFest. They had a press conference. Then they had, I think he was on CHSN last night. He was on the Mully Hall show. I'm sure he's going to be on ESPN 1000. He's just making the rounds. He's going everywhere to promote SoxFest. And obviously with my cold, that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to be at SoxFest. I don't want to get anybody sick. But during his press conference with the media yesterday, Getz maintained Luis Robert Jr., though, is available for the right deal. That's according to Bruce Levine. This is at MLB Bruce Levine. For those watching on YouTube, you can obviously see the graphic, but I am going to read it out for those listening on the podcast. White Sox GM Chris Getz said most of his offseason player additions are done. He wavered on Luis Robert Jr. Robert is available in the right deal. He has 3 years of contract control with 2 option years for club after 2025, $15 million in 25, $20 million in each option year. So, but that was 18 hours ago, and Levine pointed out he was wavering. So it's basically showing us, and especially with what Getz saying, fraction of the cost, I think Getz actually pulled the curtain back and said, this is what I'm getting. These are the offers I'm getting. And I'm not just going to trade Luis Robert Jr. for a bucket of balls and some chewing gum. So it makes sense. Take the gamble. Realize that, okay, if all I'm being told is he's never on the field, because I'm sure Getz was mentioning, he also mentions the 2023 season. I'm sure a lot of teams were like, yeah. And okay, I get that he was hurt in 2024, but look at the other seasons. He's been hurt in all the other seasons that he's played. Keep him on the field like 2023, and maybe you're going to get what you're looking for. And as every day, as I've heard me say, I still think Getz is saying he's going to rebuild this right and not cut corners. Therefore, that's one of the reasons why I think he's going to trade Luis Robert Jr., because it can help accelerate the rebuild a little bit faster. You saw what they've added to the system in the Garrett Crochet trade, and I think that's what he's looking for, a similar return. Again, these are just hunches, reading the tea leaves, listening to Getz's tones. It's not like I have this great inside information, but you can connect some dots there. And, plus if you're going to want to do this right, you're still going to need at least 3 more drafts and international free agent signing classes to even just be considering making noise in the playoffs at the end of the decade. I mean, sure, can you get back to being competitive and threatening the division by 2027 if your current prospect group develops along with what you got in the Crochet trade? Yeah. But you want to then add more like you did, with Adam Eaton and Chris Sale and Jose Quintana back last decade. You want to be able to leverage those assets. And right now, that's not going to happen with Luis Robert Jr.'s current trade value. Although former baseball executive Jim Bowden, he had in The Athletic today that 3 prospects could make a deal work. He put, things he would like to see. He'd still like to see Luis Robert Jr. to the Reds. And again, I'm not opposed. That would be one team where it's like, I've always said, not, that's actually worth saying it's, hey, we don't need to roll the dice, because as he's pointed out, 6 of their top 10 prospects are shortstops and third basemen. And you could say, well, the White Sox have a lot of those in their system. Ugh, as you can tell, guys, I'm battling this cold. I'm fighting. But first of all, that you could always use more. Right now the White Sox just need good potential baseball players. And also they might be willing to do it because if something significant, they got a couple top 100 prospects that are still low A ball, where it could make sense for the A's to go, hey, we can give up on these guys because we still don't know what they're going to be. But if Getz is throwing out LRJ's 5 WAR season in 2023, I think he's still in his heart of hearts, and correctly, I might add, and he's aiming for that crochet-like return. 2 top 100 prospects, a for sure top 25 prospect in like Kyle Teal. You're talking about maybe getting a bonus first-round pick like they got with Brady Montgomery. And then you're talking about, 2 players that could still project to be productive major league players. Chase Meidroth is being projected to at least be a starting second baseman. Is he replacement level? We don't know. You guys all know my love of the modern day Greek out of walks, but he should be either, his floor is super sub, very productive bench player, which contending teams eventually. And yes, I know contention for the White Sox seems as far away as getting to the moon, but you still should aim for that eventually when you're talking in the context of 2027, for example. But getting back to that, and Winkleman Gonzalez has a little bit of upside to maybe a bullpen arm. So I think that's kind of what he's looking for when you keep mentioning those types of WAR seasons. But again, it's only going to happen if Luis Robert Jr. is healthy and produces in 2025. Well, Getz did say most of the heavy lifting to improve the roster has been done. Should signing a bunch of guys on one-year deals be considered heavy lifting? Let's discuss the one critique I have about that next on Locked On White Sox. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easier to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. And if you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million and no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop and you save. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't get the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. I am playing a little hurt, as you can tell, battling a little cold. I think I've slept for like 14 hours last night. I mean, I crashed out really early. Chugging some orange juice. Thank gosh, there's this thing called Umka. I know they're not a sponsor of the show, but I've been taking that, and that's probably made me sound like this, where I'd probably be sounding, near death. Because whatever I caught, my daughter had like laryngitis or something, and I think I caught it, but it's at least allowed me to be functional. So I would so far say Chris Getz has actually had a solid offseason, whereas last year I would say was a terrible offseason. Every signing he's made has not had me go, that's terrible, or you just signed another former Royals player. No terrible contracts handed out either, as there's nothing wrong with a one-year deal. Would have been nice to see Jose Quintana return instead of signing Martin Perez, but at the same time, Perez is an upgrade over Chris Flexen. He's always been just a solid professional starter, has a trade, built-in trade market. Granted, it'll be a scratch-off prospect, but teams have wanted to acquire him in trades. So there's a chance to flip him at the deadline. But when I saw Scott Merkin tweet about Chris Getz saying the heavy lifting has been done, I did question if Getz should have used that wording as signing Mike Tauchman, Jose Rayo, Josh Rojas, Austin Slater, Bryce Wilson, and Perez. I wouldn't consider that heavy lifting. Got the graphic up for those watching on YouTube, but this is what Scott Merkin had at Scott Merkin Getz. Quote, we've done most of the heavy lifting for adding to the roster. The offseason is still here, and with the amount of free agents still available, there's a possibility for an addition here or there, end quote. All right, so first of all, Might suggest just the old standard. This is the off season to not spend a ton, because I actually didn't mind Chris Getz using that line when he was on the recap podcast with Brian McGuffey and David Kaplan, which I still suggest if you guys haven't listened to, go back and listen to. It's the recap podcast. Ryan McGuffey does a great job. Actually hope he would replace Connor McKnight on the pre and post for the White Sox radio broadcast. They're looking for someone because Connor McKnight is going to go to CHSN. But now I'm trailing off back to where we're supposed to be. But I would say that this just isn't the offseason to spend. We'll look for upgrades. But as of now, we like the work that we've already done. Or even the simple, we want to leave some runway for younger players like Colson Montgomery. But to say you've done heavy lifting, and I know I'm critiquing semantics one moment. Again, playing hurt, folks. Honestly, and I hate being the semantics police, but really, heavy lifting isn't the right word, to apply in terms of acquiring players. Heavy lifting when it comes to updating the front office, which Getz has been touting on his little tour here, that makes sense to say because that's what had to be done. This front office had to get updated. It had to be brought into modern times. And bringing in Ryan Fuller to be the director of hitting was something that Chris Getz hit on during his 670 The Score interview. It would be on the Odyssey app if you guys want to hear more about what I'm talking about. And he did talk about how having a holistic hitting approach not only helps develop talent up and down your roster and your systems, but it allows your current big league staff to focus on helping players get ready for the game in front of them. And how many times did it look like the White Sox hitters looked like they had no clue that there was no hit plan, that they had no idea what they were supposed to do against this pitcher? Now you hopefully will have that, because if Marcus Thames doesn't do that well in preparing the hitters, then yeah, I agree with everybody. Get him up out of here. And you can go back on past episodes for those that wanted Thames out. Look, Will Venable has plenty of time to bring in his own guys. But anyway, revamping the international scouting department, that was a must as well. Marco Patti, hey, he won awards for his signings like Yoki Cespedes, that type of stuff. But his scouting talent, while they're making big name signings like Yoki Cespedes and Micah Adolfo, that scouting team was not producing MLB players anymore. They just weren't. When your most recent win is Lenine Sosa, yeah, you might want to get a new head to bring in a new set of eyes to uncover talent in such precious talent acquisition areas, in such a precious talent acquisition area. But to say the free agent signings is heavy lifting, all you did was bring in some guys who likely bring professional play a heck of a lot better than trying, Dominic Fletcher as a starting right fielder again, although I still love Fletcher's glove. That's all you did. You just brought in some professionals that are better than the professionals that you brought in last year. That's it. It's not like you did this major signing. It's not like you went out and shocked the world and got Willie Adames. It's not like you shocked the world and got Roki Sasaki, who Getz did say they only got to the presentation round. But hey, at least they did their due diligence. At least they didn't do any organizational malpractice. But in terms of moves, though, that's the other thing. Maybe you could just say, again, you want some runway for some of these guys. Because in terms of moves, honestly, I could see maybe it still can't hurt to see if Nick Ahmed would be worth bringing into spring training just to have a veteran cover in case of Colson Montgomery needing some time in the minors. I know his batting numbers have been terrible as time has gone by. Can still play a decent shortstop as he was a -1 defensive run saved. And that's a lot better than trying, Lenine Sosa there or Josh Rojas. And those are options that Chris Getz has floated. And yes, I know Brooks Baldwin is still on the team, still has some potential. He could cover as well. But if the idea is also to create some competition in spring training, why not at least consider it, especially since Ahmed has crossover with assistant GM Josh Barfield when they're both in Arizona. And I'm still not opposed to seeing what Austin Hayes could do if the price goes down on him. Can he have a bounce back year? I know it's overlap. I know it's another left fielder or outfielder. I know it's a potential just a guy who's going to be a DH, but he has worked with Ryan Fuller. He could regain his all-star form. And again, you can flip him at the deadline. Could you still look at some starting pitching like Jake Flaherty if he was willing to take a 1-year deal, or Jacob Junis or Andrew Heaney? If the price goes down, again, to flip at the deadline. But again, the thing, though, that I think, and I really would have preferred Chris Getz to say that, instead of we're doing heavy lifting, because, think of it this way. He's got to balance giving runway to a lot of these players, but also try to get some guys on the roster that can bring prospects back in a trade, because this still should be the prospect asset acquisition phase. You only get one draft a year and one international free agent signing class a year. You can acquire veterans and trade them before the deadline whenever. So I think that's kind of the thing that I would have preferred to hear him touch on. Then, well, just heavy lifting's done, and if there's some bargains left, we'll get some bargains. Maybe be more conscious of, for example, shortstop, we want to give Colson a shot. And he did talk about that. We want to give him a clear shot, a clean shot. Whereas in right field, we don't have that option right now. We don't have the young guy. Braden Montgomery could be a potential right fielder for the future for the next 10 years and finally solve that problem. But he's not going to be ready. So that's why we went and got Austin Slater and Mike Tauchman. Third base, Miguel Vargas. Yes, he's there, but he didn't hit very well at all. That's why you brought in Josh Rojas. So maybe seeing again, do you have these positions covered where, guys that may have not earned the runway yet or haven't given a runway and have showed you basically nothing. So I think that's what I'd prefer him to see. And again, I know it's a critique and it's something small, but it was just like, really? Mike Tauchman? And I like Mike Tauchman. I like all the free agent signings, but that's not heavy lifting. Heavy lifting would be signing Anthony Santander. Speaking of, non-roster invites, I want to go over the 5 that I'm interested to watch in spring training on today's Top 5 Friday, and that's next on Locked On White Sox. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. And I always maintain FanDuel's money lines, spreads, and over-unders. They're fun to play. But if you want to win big, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures are the way to go. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalties. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. And hope you guys have a good weekend. If you're going to SoxFest, sounds like a neat time, although it would be nice to have like AJ Pierzynski there. Guess he didn't get an invite because heaven forbid you have somebody that's critical of your franchise. Andrew Vaughn turns out will not be able to make it, due to the storms. But still, it's nice to have SoxFest back. And again, at the remitting, where they have it at, it's a neat idea to be a more intimate setting, because right now, a lot of Sox fans, being a Sox fan is probably, you don't have a huge fan base right now. You just really have the diehards. Most of your fans are apathetic right now. You'll bring them back once you start winning. Well, the Sox let most of their minor league signings trickle out. So today's announcement of their non-roster invites, really no surprise, but they did announce them. And what I want to do is go over the 5 players on that list that I'll pay some attention to, a little bit more actually, that I'm going to pay attention to during spring training. And I want to go over that in today's Top 5 Friday. So the first is Braden Montgomery, as this will likely be his first unofficial professional games if he's recovered enough to play in spring training games. He's that boomer bust prospect that the Sox got in the Garrett Crochet trade, a first-round pick that they may have taken if he didn't break his ankle at Texas A&M during the Super Regional. But he could be the next great Sox player, or a prospect who fails to develop. But I like how he has such a high ceiling, and it'd be great if the White Sox added some more high ceiling prospects. But also just a chance to just see him play some baseball, professional baseball with a wood bat. Because you and I don't even have the slightest clue what he's going to be able to do, even at the complex league or low A, if that's where he goes. Because again, that ankle injury wiped out his entire summer. He did not do any baseball related activities, once he was drafted by the Boston Red Sox. So I'm just interested to see, just watch him play professional baseball, even if it's in exhibition games. And yeah, while I'm interested in seeing Kyle Teel and Edgar Caro, I'm fairly confident one or the other will do enough to make the team. It's Colson Montgomery. He's next on my list, as the fear is, there's a lot of fear right now that he has recently slid down the MLB pipeline overall top 100 rankings. He's now no longer considered a top 10 shortstop prospect. People are worried about that, but it doesn't really worry me, actually, because it makes sense. He had a terrible AAA season. He had 214. He did not hit well. Part of it was he was probably overmatched. Part of it was maybe, I had Chris Clegg on the show a month saying that he had an injury. And some of it was just maybe he didn't know he had to work that hard. And now he does. And as a learning. And he also, the reason why I'm not totally worried is he did have a strong September, had a great Arizona Fall League. I know it's hitting in Arizona. And he's been working hard this offseason, reportedly. So if he does that, yeah, the shortstop job is his to lose. Clearly, I want to see Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz get some innings, as that's my number 3 and 4. And again, it's not in particular order. I'm just saying here's the top 5 guys. I just want to see how they fare against big league hitters. And yes, I know it's spring training. And who knows if they will get actual innings, maybe 1 or 2. But I just want to see how they do against big league hitters, even if those hitters are more worried about their tee time. That's usually what these veterans are. Maybe they get in later in the innings of some of these games where, again, you are basically facing your peers, the minor leaguers with the invites like we're talking about now. So, but I wouldn't mind them getting a start just to see how do they match up right now. It's a nice litmus test because, again, the idea Chris Getz, again, he's making his rounds. It's speaking glowingly about them, but it's now building up their arms to handle a big league workload. So that's kind of what they're talking about there. And they are considered the 2 best left-handed pitching prospects in all of baseball, and I'll discuss that more on Monday. But then finally, I'm going to put this in a tie. I'm actually going to look at Bobby Dahlbeck, Cal Mitchell, and Andre Lipsius as why are you saying that over again? Carroll or Teal or, Grant Taylor or Mason Adams, highly regarded prospects. Why are you looking at these guys that have failed? Well, these are the perfect non-roster invites type guys. Because you're trying to see if there's still something that can be reclaimed. Because they failed to live up to the high hopes of their previous teams. And the Sox can use some pop in the lineup. So if Bobby can hit some dingers in spring training to make the big league club, I'll live with the strikeouts. Because this team needs pop. 1 second. Oh, sorry. Again, this has been a nasty virus, folks. But it can't hurt at this point in the rebuild to see if you can find your version of Brent Rooker. Even if it's not like to all-star form, can you find a productive Major League Baseball player off the scrap heap? And I keep telling you, you don't have Scott Pasednik being that 2005 World Series hero if the Brewers never gave him a second chance. So Cal Mitchell and Andre Lipsius still have some athletic ability that makes them intriguing to think maybe it can happen on the South Side. Maybe they can be viable big league players. I mean, it's bound to happen for the Sox, right? Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today and putting up with me having a cold. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB Baseball Guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back Monday, and I promise I will actually get to what I wanted to address today. But then Chris Getz spoke about Luis Robert Jr., so I pushed another topic to Monday, and that is, would the White Sox look a lot different had they gone in a different direction with the number 3 pick in the 2019 draft and not selected Andrew Vaughn? Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Luis Robert Jr. likely staying with the Sox to start the season, Chris Getz likely using the word likely using not the best word to describe the team's free agent moves, and the top 5 Friday of non-roster invite players I'm looking forward to seeing. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and I will see you Monday.